Welcome to the Academy, your training hub for entrepreneurship in this new digital economy. People from all walks of life, students, professionals, and online entrepreneurs, direct sellers, online dropshippers are now looking for innovative ways and means to maximize the power of this new digital economy and learn from home and earn from home as well. Remember that there are 3 critical success factors for you to be successful in this new digital economy. Number 1 is your entrepreneurial mindset. Number 2, your entrepreneurial mastery. And number 3 is your entrepreneurial management. 3 questions that you have to ask yourself. What are you passionate about? Number 2, what are the relative skills that you have in this new economy? And number 3, what do you think are the expectations of your partners or your clients or your customers? We at the Academy offer you valuable masterclass courses that will develop you and hone you to become a champion entrepreneur online. We want you to become a digital brand in this new economy. So click the link below and learn more about the 4 masterclass courses that we offer in entrepreneurship, in entrepreneurial management, digital entrepreneurship, and digital selling. So again, I'm your coach, Jonathan Petalver of the Academy, your training hub for entrepreneurship in this new digital economy. Welcome and see you in class.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, East Coast, of course. Good evening in the Philippines. Good evening in Asia. Good afternoon in the Middle East. Again, you are watching Champion Ka Mornings with Coach Gary Smith from the East Coast, specifically in Connecticut. So I'm your coach, Coach Jonathan of the Global Academy New Zealand. And we are here once again with Coach Gary Smith to tell us, how can we become entrepreneurial leaders in this new digital economy. Before we start, I'd like to greet our first student from the Philippines, Pasig City, Iloilo in the Philippines. Maayong gabi. Good evening, Roy Diaz, all the way from Iloilo City. That's the southern part of the Philippines. So with us again tonight, let's all welcome our coach, Gary Smith. How are you, Gary?
Hey, Jonathan, a very good evening to you. And it's cloudy, looks like a little bit of rain here this morning on the east coast of Connecticut, but our spirits are high and I'm excited to get into it today.
Correct. And you know what? We have one of our students coming from Pasig City, Iloilo. So when you're here in the Philippines, we can take you there. It's one of the best cities, provinces here in the Philippines. So he's with us, watching and continuously learning with us. Because one of the keys really, Gary, is for us to learn how to unlearn, right? I mean, we always have to be humble to learn new things, especially in this new economy. So what do we have for our audience right now, Gary?
Well, first of all, welcome to all of our students. Today we're going to be talking about entrepreneurial leadership gaps. And that, I think, is a very important thing. But let's go back. As I mentioned in the past, this is season 4, and this is episode number 4. But the first 3 sessions that we've had are really sort of foundational building blocks. So let's just take a look and do a very, very quick review of what we've covered. And for those of you who haven't been able to watch live or haven't been able to watch the replays, please go back, because it really is a building block type of program that we're doing here. But in session 1, we talked about the leadership mindset, and that your mindset is the set of your mind, and it really determines how you view yourself, how you view success, how others view you, and ultimately how you view others. And then in session 2, we talked about choices and the power of beliefs, and that how beliefs drive ultimately our behavior. And we have to know our beliefs, and we have to be specifically focused on uncovering the beliefs that we have that are not serving us, and then making a constant effort to change those beliefs into beliefs that are meaningful and useful for us. And then last week in session 3, we talked about entrepreneurial purpose. And the importance of understanding both your global and your individual purpose. And we talked about how your individual purpose is really found at the intersection of your passions, your skills, and how you can combine those two things to add value to your world and simultaneously be compensated for what you're doing. And as I mentioned, those first 3 sessions are foundational. They're really crucial building blocks, not just for your career, but for your entire life. Because I think it's very important to see that your mindset, your beliefs, and your purpose operate in what I would call a symbiotic relationship. They feed on and influence each other. So let me give you 3 quick ways that they do that. Number 1, your mindset influences what you believe is possible. Number 2, your beliefs influence your mindset and how you see yourself and your world. And finally, both your mindset and your beliefs influence the purpose you choose and your level of confidence in your ability to be able to achieve that purpose. And there, I'm sure, are many, many other interactions. We could probably spend our whole session today talking about that. But today's session is about entrepreneurial leadership gaps.
Gaps.
So let's talk about what is a gap. And I think the best answer to that question can be found in asking ourselves another question, and that is, what are all of the things that are standing in the way of you attaining your purpose? So last week I asked you to take 3 sheets of paper and to label them passion, skills, and value, and to begin looking at how your passions and skills can be combined to add value to your world, and to ultimately lead you to the discovery of whatever it is that your unique purpose in life is. But when we think about gaps, what we're really seeking to understand is what's missing, what needs to be changed, what needs to be improved for us to reach our goals and fulfill our purpose in life. And I think that gaps occur in 3 different categories. They fall into the category of skill gaps, personal growth gaps, and what I call prioritization gaps. Skill gaps are the gaps that exist in your knowledge or experience. They can either be things you need to learn, maybe a new skill that you need to acquire, or things that you need to understand at a much deeper level than you currently do. And let me give you some examples of that. Early on, when I first introduced myself to the class, I told you I started my career as an engineer, and then I began to grow up through the ranks of engineering. But when I transitioned from being an engineer to a manager, I had to go through that LeaderShift from being an individual contributor and to learning to lead and care for other people. And so there was knowledge and experience that I needed to acquire there. And as my career grew, I realized I needed more education. So I went back to school to earn my MBA so that I could expand my knowledge of things like strategic planning, marketing, finance, and various aspects of business. Not that I became an expert in those areas, but I was able to carry on an intelligent conversation with other people and organizations about those things. And I wasn't lost when they started throwing around terms that many people wouldn't understand. And as a result of that, today I'm a lifelong learner. I've realized that I'll never know everything I need to know. So I follow and study some of the great business leaders of our time, people like John Maxwell, Dave Ramsey, and Michael Hyatt, because my quest for learning is never going to go away. That way I can offer my clients and our students here the very best in cutting edge knowledge and experience. So that's skills gaps. But then we get into the topic of personal growth gaps. And personal growth gaps seek to answer the question, who must I become in order to be able to achieve my goals? So you see, it's not just a matter of how much you know, it's how much you're growing as an individual. How much are you open to change in your life? One of my mentors, John Maxwell, has what he calls the law of the lid. And he says, basically, imagine yourself in a jar with the lid on. He said, you will never be able to grow beyond that lid. And the only way that you can grow beyond that lid is by constantly becoming someone better and constantly improving yourself. And as you become better, as you grow as a person, that lid or that ceiling moves up and you become more capable of having success and of achieving the goals in your life. So you have to invest in your personal development and growth. And you must learn to be honest with yourself about all the areas of your life that are lacking. I think that's one of the great challenges for us, is to look ourselves in the mirror and to have that honest, open conversation. And your personal development is not limited to your career. One of the greatest keys to success in life is to become a well-rounded person. So that means you have to look at all aspects of your life, your spiritual life, your physical life, your relationship, everything, and develop a plan to improve and enhance each one of those, not overnight, not all together, but little by little by little. And then the third area is the area of prioritization gaps. And that prioritization gaps I look at as they're about defining and focusing on your top priorities outside of your business or career. Now, your career or your business is important, but there are other things that are infinitely more important. For me, my priorities are, first of all, God and my relationship with Him. If I don't have a good relationship with God, if I'm not in tune with Him, nothing in life seems to really matter. Secondly is my marriage. Being close with my spouse and being able to communicate with her and share a good life together. Third are my children and their families. I have 3 daughters who are all grown now, and we have grandchildren. And so it's focusing on being there with them and giving them a priority in my life. And then fourth, my business. And then finally, my hobbies and other interests. So it's not that my business or my career or your business or career are not important. It's that we have to keep them in the proper context and perspective as we live our lives. If we don't, it's kind of like the story in the Bible, the man who built his house on the sand. When the storms hit, the whole thing came crashing down. So if we don't constantly maintain the correct perspective and balance of our priorities, then we're in danger of really suffering, not only in our business lives, but in the rest of our lives. And as we think about this whole thing of gaps, I think there are 2 key laws that we need to use in order to get real clarity on what's going on. The first is the law of awareness. And the law of awareness simply says you must know yourself in order to be able to grow yourself. So that's really doing that honest analysis and looking at those gaps. What gaps in skills do we have? What gaps in personal growth do we have? What gaps in prioritization do we have? And becoming aware of the things that need to change. And then the second law is the law of intentionality. And the law of intentionality says that you and you alone are responsible for your personal and professional growth and development. It's not your husband, it's not your wife, it's not your professors at college, it's not your boss, it's you. And until we become aware of that and accept responsibility for it, one of the things I talk about a lot of times with people is that the first step to solving any problem or tackling any challenge in your life is to own it. You must own it first. So realizing that that the growth and change in your life is your responsibility comes first, and then you must develop an intentional plan for closing those gaps. And as we close those gaps, as we close those skills gaps, those growth gaps, those prioritization gaps, we can see ourselves accelerating toward the goals that we have in life. So what I would encourage you to do is go back to the list you made last week and begin to identify what those gaps are. And again, please understand, this is not a beat yourself up. How come I haven't done this? I have gaps here that I shouldn't have. It's not that. It's just looking at things from the perspective of here's where I am in my life right now, And once we understand what those gaps are, then we can begin to prioritize them and say, okay, here's where I need to go from here, and here's what I'm going to do to begin closing those gaps. And if you have any questions about that, that's what people like Jonathan and I do for a living. We sit down and we talk with people and we ask questions and we help them understand what those gaps are, and then we help them develop and execute those plans to become the people that they need to become in order to achieve great things in life. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to you, Jonathan. Maybe you have some questions, or maybe some of our students do.
Yeah, well, what I have are realizations. Now, the good thing about this, guys, now for those of us who are watching, just imagine, Gary, we are 1,000 miles apart right now, and we really are trying to show you also that us as leaders, or you as a leader, or developing to become one, right? There are really gaps that we have to address ourselves. Just imagine, I was telling you, Gary, this morning. I was talking to this business leader that seems to, he doesn't know that there's a gap in what he does. For me, first things first, we are a work in progress, and it's good that we always have a checkpoint of ourselves as leaders, especially for some of us who really would like to go into entrepreneurship or business or investments and all. It's good to know where you are first, know where you are right now, so that it would be easier for you to measure the distance of where you are to where you want to be. Because a lot of people right now, Gary, they really would like to do something, just to get out of this, pandemic and all. But it's good that sometimes you have to take 2-3 steps backward, reset, reboot, and reprogram yourself, and look at yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's always about, one of the character traits of a great leader for me is someone who is humble, of accepting things, of really seeing himself where they are now. That's why just like what I wrote here, Gary, and I'd like to put an emphasis on this one. It's really, if you really want to grow yourself, you have to know yourself. And and and, and people change. You and I, we change. We thought all the while we're good pre-COVID, until such time we discover that we haven't, like, unleashed ourselves yet, the full potential of ourselves. And then here we are amidst this COVID-19 pandemic, with all these strands and all. That's why, let's face ourselves in the mirror, guys. I mean, if we really would like to lead our family, if we want to lead our organization, it's best that we learn how to unlearn. We learn to prioritize. Now, one thing good that, with what you mentioned, Gary, is, of course, at the end of the day, start and end with God. Don't just end with God when you don't have any option at all. It's always God, and of course your spouse or your family, and then your profession or your business, and of course your hobbies. No, that's where we will cultivate ourselves. Where we put our priorities on is where we are headed on. For me, it's like that. If I prioritize my health today, for sure I'll be heading to a good health. But if I don't prioritize my health today, for sure I'm also heading for a not so good healthy, lifestyle. These are my takes. Gary. I really believe that, after 3 sessions we're in, we are changing our mindset, and of course, as we change our mindset, our beliefs have changed, our purpose. This time, guys, it's time to prioritize those gaps. Because
Yeah, and a good thing that you said there, Jonathan, which I think is really key, is that we need to take stock of where we are. And I was thinking about, how many people have GPS in their cars. And the first thing you do, when you get into the car, you're going to plug in where it is that you want to go. That's your goals, that's your purpose, and things like that. But then the GPS says, okay, where are you? Where are we starting from? Because until
good.
you tell me where you're starting from, I can't tell you how to get there. And that's the whole
Correct.
the power of gaps, is knowing where we are and
I
looking
love
into
that.
the future. And as you said too, it's a very dynamic thing, because um, the more I learn and the more experience I have, the more I realize just how much I don't know and how much I
Correct.
have to pursue. And that's where I think the humble part of things come in is to realize that that we don't have all the knowledge out there, and that's not the important part. The important part is using the knowledge that we have and being honest with ourselves about what we know and what we don't know.
Correct. At the end of the day, as leaders, we've got nothing to prove, we've got nothing to boast, but everything to gain for as long as we know that we can always develop ourselves and become a better version of ourselves. Because there are like leaders, Gary, that of course, as in as much as they want to lead an organization or even their families, they don't know the gap. And identifying the gap itself is a skill. For me, identifying your gap is a leadership skill. Just imagine, someone is driving, right? Someone's driving, and then you don't. Of course, you know where you want to go, but along the way, something happened that you have to turn right and go straight into the bush, right? First things first, as you mentioned about the GPS and the compass and your ways, here in the Philippines, you have to look at that, and it will reroute you. And the
Right.
best way to understand is how many kilometers or miles have you went far too off the right road, and all you have to do is go back,
Right.
and from there you can pursue to wherever you want to lead. For me, this is the greatest takeaway here: having the right mindset, belief, and purpose, and at the same time always looking for gaps, because there should always be gaps. There should
Yeah.
always be gaps.
There.
Having a gap right now is not a disadvantage. Knowing your gap is a big advantage for me, I think.
Oh, it's that is absolutely true. Understanding the gaps, and as you said, one of the things that I've used in the past that I think is very, very powerful is think about an airplane flight. You're going to be flying to the United States in just a few weeks, but say we're in New York and we're going to fly from New York to London in the UK. The pilot has what's called an autopilot on the plane. So once the plane reaches cruising altitude, he puts the plane on autopilot. And the job of the autopilot is to look at where the plane is compared to where the plane needs to be and make the appropriate adjustments. And literally on a flight of 3,000 or 4,000 miles like that, the plane is off course 95% of the time. But the autopilot is saying, off course, correct, off course, correct, off course, correct. And because of those little corrections that are being made, several hours from now, that plane is going to land right on a dime in London. And that's the way we need to approach our lives. And that's the gaps, is that, we are going to get off course, but we have to realize, we have to be honest with ourselves when we're off course. And we have to try to catch those things and make those little corrections in our lives before we veer too far off course and have to have a major correction to come back.
Correct. Correct. Just like any GPS, right? When you put a GPS and then you're supposed to turn right, but you turned left, just listen to the GPS and he will tell you you are 100 kilometers away from your destination. Still, it will reroute you to where your destination is, but it's good that you know where your gap is. We have a great, one of our audiences here, our loyal audience, our student is Rayan. Hello, Coach and Gary, watching from the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much, Roy. It's already, it's afternoon, 5:30 p.m. in the United Arab Emirates. Also, we have people watching from Australia, Gary, from Europe, from Netherlands, of course, France. We have people watching from New Zealand, and of course, people watching from Manila and all parts of Asia. So anything else to add, Gary, before we end our session? It's a great, impactful learning session again for us, Gary. And I'm
Yeah.
sure,
I
anything.
would just say, take the time, make the investment in yourself to begin understanding what those gaps are, because it's so powerful. And you'd be surprised how much you can accomplish with very, very little effort, because there are a lot of things that you're going to uncover where the changes are very, very easy. And there are going to be some things where you see a need to invest more in yourself. Be willing to do that. Become that lifelong learner who just constantly approaches everything from the standpoint of what do I need to learn? How do I feed myself every day? And again, remember, it's not just about your career, not just about your business life. It's about all areas of life. Are you studying to be a better person of God? Are you studying to be a better husband, or better wife, a better father, a better mother? Those sorts of things. So take that sort of approach, because ultimately, and I know you agree with this, Jonathan, when I look at the GPS and the course corrections in my life, that little voice that's telling me the corrections I need to make is the voice of God. And that's the one we really need to be listening for.
Correct. And I learned so much again today, Gary. It's really prioritization, because at every stage of our lives, my dear friends, people change. For me, people you thought will never change, because they're bad, they can become good. And so are the people who are good today can also become bad. So it's always about adjusting and adjusting until such time that we see a better version of ourselves. And of course, as you mentioned, until such time, God called us and tell us, well done, my good and faithful servant. So with that, thank you very much again, Gary. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so excited to see you next month or in the next few months. Please pray for us. I know God is cooking up something for each and every one. Guys, we are already midway, our 8-part series. So let's optimize and maximize. If you are watching this, or if you're watching this all over again, please watch the previous 3 series. Go to coachjonathan.net and please check Gary Smith's website. So again, this is your coach streaming live here all the way from Manila, Philippines with Coach Gary Smith from Connecticut in the East Coast of the United States of America. You had just watched Champ Yun Ka. This is Coach Jonathan, building leaders
and leading builders.
God bless you and see you in class. Thank you so much, Gary.
See you guys.
We are the Global Academy, your training hub for entrepreneurship and business leadership. Headquartered in New Zealand, we have satellite offices in Melbourne, New York, Dubai, and Manila. The Global Academy New Zealand offers strategic masterclasses with our 4M proven framework that transforms mindset, develops mastery, strengthens management, and mentorship programs to sustain your organization competitive advantage. We are the Global Academy New Zealand, building leaders, leading builders. See you in class.